Thanks everybody in the audience for being here. Thank you, panelists, for being here. This has been a really fun day. We got to hear from Instagram, Tiffany from Instagram, talking about the future of the creator economy and her role and where she sees things going. We got to hear from influencers talk about how they work with brands. We got to hear a panel of brands talk about how they work with influencers, and now we're wrapping it up, bringing it all together, and having a group of experts talk about how we see the future and where we've come over the last months and years. I'm John Busby. I'm Centerfield's CMO. My partner in crime is Sara Korab, who's Director of Influencer Marketing at Cvon Social. Because we have both brands and creators here, I think we're going to sort of tag team on how we ask questions. I'm going to ask Matt to start by introducing himself, what you do at Medical Guardian, and then also, as everyone knows, everyone who is speaking today, we're making a donation to the charity of their choice. So Matt, if you could tell us the charity that you chose and why.
Thanks, John. Yeah, my name is Matt Guerrieri. I am the Chief Marketing Officer for a company called Medical Guardian, and we are a senior health technology company. Primarily, the main focus is on personal emergency response systems, but we're starting to get into telehealth, telemedicine, and any way possible that we can continue to help the aging population remain in their home for as long as possible. I've been with the company for 8+ years, and I've started from marketing manager all the way up, and I've seen the growth, and it's been wonderful. And looking forward to kind of how this healthcare space is evolving, and have no doubt influencers will be a part of that piece. I chose to do Meals on Wheels. I'm sure everyone's familiar with kind of who they are, but especially for seniors, and just for the ability to get a meal, a hot meal, delivered to them, and or being able to communicate. A lot of the things they do is actually going into the home and having conversations, and it's really important for especially Medical Guardian, for our audience. It's something, loneliness is a big factor to depression and frequent falls and every other thing that comes with senior health decline. So it was really important for us to kind of focus our efforts there.
Thanks, Matt, and welcome, Christine. Good to see you. We're just going through and doing a round of intros. So Christine, I'll pass it to you. And then also if you could, in addition to talking about what you do, is the charity that you chose to donate to and why?
I chose to donate to St. Jude. I think that was like the hardest question in preparing for this panel, was to pick a charity. So I've just seen lots of friends and their children affected. So it seemed like a good choice. So yeah, I am brand manager at Naterra International, which owns Tree Hut body scrubs, and then Baby Magic bath wash. Baby Magic has been around for a long time, legacy brand, which I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with. And Tree Hut, we have really been fortunate to enjoy a lot of support on TikTok this past year. So we've really been just trying to keep up with the lovely support that we've had. So a really nice time to join this brand. So, and just background on me, I have been in social media for over a decade now, which seems crazy, before paid social even existed. So I started in New York at the Council of Fashion Designers of America, which was just really interesting because that was back when, Facebook would reach out and want us, to introduce them to fashion designers and convince them of the value of social media, and Google and all those companies. So it was a great time to start out, and I think it's really influenced my strategy as a marketer, that kind of combination of both organic content and paid marketing. So excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, I have the pleasure of asking our influencer panelists to introduce themselves. So please let us know who you are, a little bit about your history working in the influencer marketing space. And then just like our brand panelists did, let us know the charity that you've asked us to donate to. So Florencia, let's start with you.
Okay. Hi, I'm Florencia and I'm a blogger. I started blogging in 2013, mainly about fashion designers. And then I started to notice bloggers, and I said, okay, I'm going to give it a try. So it was around 2014 at the end that I decided to start sharing my personal style and my travels. And yes, the industry has gone, has become huge, and I am absolutely in love with it. So that's why I've continued to do it. And the charity of my choice is Muffin's Halo for Blind Dogs, because I adopted a blind dog many years ago, and I donate to them. And I just love dogs, and I'm big into, adopting and rescuing. So that's why I chose them.
Thanks. Frederick, would you like to go next?
Hi, my name is Frederick Goodall. I've been blogging since 2008. I started with a fatherhood blog called Mocha Dad, and I've transitioned to my current blog called Mocha Man Style, which is more of a lifestyle brand and covers a lot of different topics. Yeah, I've seen a lot of changes in the space, a lot of things that have occurred, and I'm very eager to talk about what's happened in all these years that I've been working in it. The nonprofit I chose is called BakerRipley. They really work for equitable outcomes for lower income people in all aspects of their lives, education, work related, and just belonging. So that's the one I chose.
Much. And Sami?
Hi, I'm Sami Cone. I have been creating content online for over a decade, but really have always specialized in taking that influence offline as well. So I host my own 30-minute TV show on the CBS affiliate here in Nashville. I'm an author, have done radio, podcasting, lives, and I'm also a professor as well. And my charity is called Both Hands. It's near and dear to our heart. We do service projects for widows to raise money to bring orphans home and find them forever families, so that the families that are trying to adopt don't have to spend anything. And so we just completed our annual vision project this past weekend, and it was in honor of a father figure to my son that we just lost in a tragic way last year. So I really appreciate you all donating to this and letting me share about Both Hands.
All right, well, thanks everybody. I think Sarah and I are going to hand off questions here. I think I'll start on the brand side, and maybe if you can, Matt and Christine, talk a little bit about what's gone well and what hasn't gone well, either through a specific example or as you're sort of thinking about how to leverage creators and influencers in what you do. And I'll ask Matt to begin, if that's all right.
Yeah, it's actually interesting. I myself I have my own preconceived notions, obviously, what influencer marketing is to me, and I think everyone else has their own, and I'm excited to hear from the experts on kind of their take on it. But from our side, we really have used them to help leverage our review process. So when you get into new products and services launching on brick and mortar or retail, a lot of the digital components revolve very heavily on star ratings. And obviously we don't want to stuff fake star ratings in there. That's not what we're about, but certainly it's very difficult once you start a process to get the purchases, wait for the star review to come. And so we go out there, find a group that wants to basically purchase the product, keep it, and review it on behalf of us, just to try to get influencers to help populate those reviews. From a growth perspective, I would love to hear more about how to use influencers in order to scale the content side of things. I've never seen. I've always been in the paid realm, optimizing websites and landing pages and keywords, and have never really been savvy to the content side of things, especially how influencers can really impact a brand. And so I don't have a very strong position in how we've used influencers to help nurture our brand and nurture our story, but certainly know just within the healthcare space, with a lot of physicians obviously prescribing medical alert systems for older adults as they leave the hospital, to the massive caregiver population, especially on Facebook, that started to form, and how more people are talking about caregiver stress and what it's doing to them and how they're alleviating that. And with the caregiver crisis, with more caregivers just being outnumbered by the sheer mass volume of boomers that are turning 65 plus. There's certainly a large storyline there to be formed, and I don't think we're in that conversation quite at all, and even as much as I'd like to be in the future. So I think it's a huge opportunity for the senior space. I think everyone thinks, at least in my realm, influencer marketing is young kids going on there doing, quick videos to just talk about a product. You got the Kim Kardashians of the world kind of really utilizing it for a lot of the millennial type offerings, but I'd love to see and hear kind of how it would be executed in a space where the audience is 45 to 65, your middle-aged adult who's taking care of an older adult, and how they would utilize it, or how they would receive that type of influencer marketing, and how it can impact their purchase decisions.
Thanks, Matt, for that. I'm sure Frederick, Sami, and Florencia will have some ideas and thoughts. And I think you represent a lot of brands that are in the stage of exploration. Christine, you come from the other side where it's been core to your brand story, I think, for a while. So maybe talk about someone who's not in the exploration phase, but more in the execution phase.
Yeah, so I'm kind of have the perfect story. Really, a year ago when I joined Tree Hut, we had 40,000 followers on Instagram. Of course, COVID has come in, and all of a sudden self-care, people had more time at home. People are looking for affordable ways that they can, take care of themselves, feel better, feel less stressed, wearing less makeup, more interested in, beauty and taking care of their body, longer time to shower and have a bath. So for us, we were, just really fortunate that we were, kind of one of the right brands at the right time. And, we really do have a great product. And I think that's always crucial as well. But we, in the last year, we've grown to 200,000 followers on Instagram. I'd love to take credit for that, but I really can't. I mean, it's all the support that we've had from, the beauty community on social media. And quite frankly, I think I'll take credit as a marketer for the first thing coming into a brand is to really start listening in on the audience, is to pay attention. Okay, who is our audience? What are they talking about? Doing all the things that you do as a brand manager, diving in deep. I really value the community that has supported us in the last year and embraced us. We've had success on TikTok. It's been really crazy. So hashtag Tree Hut, I think we have 100 million views. I'm not even saying that to necessarily shout it out. It's more so from the brand side of it is trying to see all of these avenues and listen, right? Because it's taken off, and really understanding what the consumers are saying about us and leveraging that community. So really in terms of influencer strategy, I would always do this at any brand, but really leveraging the people that are already there, the people that already are supporting us and trying to give back to that community. And quite frankly, a lot of the brand work that we've done has been really looking at the beautiful beauty community that has really supported us. Their beautiful message of body positivity, diversity, inclusion, self-care. They're the best spokespeople that we could have even asked for. So, I'm really proud of the way our brand has really tried to kind of really listen to who our consumer is and to listen to our audience. So we're, working hard to even give back more and really leverage those voices. So, in terms of the challenges, it is a lot of bandwidth. We have, a smaller team. So we're really trying to keep up. We don't want anyone to think that, we haven't responded to something, because, we really want to make sure that we're listening and responding and appreciating all of that support. I think that's always a challenge on the brand side, especially as you scale, right? To kind of just try and keep up and keep that authentic engagement, because we're not using an agency. Maybe that's the other thing that we should mention is I really believe in trying to engage with your influencers from the internal side and not be going through a third party. So it has its challenges, but I believe it's worth the time and investment.
Thanks. So my next question is for the influencer panelists here. And I want to piggyback a little bit on what Christine was talking about brands listening to communities, spending time online, understanding who is a fit for their brands. So from all of your perspectives, what tactics can a brand use to find the right people for the campaigns that they're hiring for? And Frederick, I'd like to start with you.
I think you have to look at your overall goals for the campaign and what you're trying to achieve, and always don't always be so narrow-minded in what you think the campaign should be, but kind of open your mind and think about who can really benefit from this. Who can I really connect with? Who can I talk to? And who really may need this product or service? Matthew, you brought up one thing about including like older people in campaigns and connecting with them. You know, a lot of brands, like, they want this 18 to 35 demographic. But one thing I try to talk to brands about is people over 40 have a lot more discretionary spending. And they're a lot more willing to try different things and new experiences. And that's a big market that people miss because they're trying to get this kind of younger crowd and I guess more popular crowd that everyone's vying for. So if everyone's vying for this particular market, there's wide open space on this other end of the spectrum that people can tap into. And these people are ready to spend money. These people are ready to engage. They're on the platforms. They have trust in particular influencers. They may have their own set of influence that they can use and talk to people about. But I think the main thing is really, and look at what you're trying to achieve, but don't box yourself in. Try and figure out a wider spectrum that you can connect with. And even if you have to break up the campaign into different segments, like we're going to segment this group, or we're going to segment that group, we're going to segment this next group, but don't put yourself into a box that you may miss out on opportunities to connect with a wider audience.
Great. Sami, do you have thoughts on that and where brands can go to find the right influencers for their campaigns?
Yeah, I think, Christine said it, listening is really key. And I've heard that through all of the great panels and sessions today where, even the influencers that have spoken have said, when I love something, I share about it. So I think finding someone, if a brand can find someone that they really resonate with, whether that's they love their imagery, they love their message. Matthew was saying sometimes it's hard to find someone like who has a personal story that's talking about senior care, medical care, that's their storyline that's woven throughout everything they're doing. If you can find that person that you as a brand really resonate with, because, we flip-flop this as an influencer, but if a brand can find that person, then you can go to them and develop that relationship. And I think one of my favorite things as an influencer is to be a connector. And so, for instance, because I do online, but I also do TV, I've gotten a lot of work. Sometimes I won't always get a campaign, but a brand will hire me almost to be a conduit to help them find other influencers. If I say, you know what, I'm not in the right area, right? I'm not in the right either age demographic or physical demographic, but I know others who are, because if I'm a blogger that's also doing TV, that I know other bloggers that are doing TV, or vice versa. If I'm really great on TikTok, chances are I know other influencers that are great on TikTok. And so I think not being afraid to say, we love what you're doing. Are there others like you? And just making sure that you validate. I've had that happen once where they've come to me and then gone elsewhere. And obviously that's not a great feeling. But to be able to say, look for, who is it that you want to reach? And I appreciate Frederick's point of also saying, don't pigeonhole. I think those of us that have been doing this for a long time know who our audiences are and can say pretty quickly, like, yes, that's a fit, or no, that's not a fit. And if you come to me saying, I want to do something here, and I say, well, my audience is really heavily on Facebook, for instance, because I skew towards an older demographic because of my TV audience as well, then you can start that conversation to narrow in. But I think it's, looking for that organic conversation, finding someone that that fits what your brand is trying to communicate, who you're trying to reach, and then having them help you to go beyond that scope.
Great. And Florencia, do you have additional thoughts on how brands can best find influencers to work with?
Oh, I love what Frederick and Sami said. I think it's so important to start out by saying, do you want to create awareness? If you want to create awareness, then it's better to have a bigger variety of bloggers. Every blogger is its own world, and they cover such unique and personal, areas. So I love what he was saying. Don't just go for a specific type of blogger, because the amount of coverage that you can get from different kinds of people out there is enormous. And I've seen it. And I, sometimes when I do big campaigns and you sort of get to see who else is on it. And sometimes I notice how some brands will choose girls that are all identical. And sometimes I think, how are they going to reach such a large amount of people if we're all the same? And then you see other campaigns, and I'll look around through hashtags or any other way, and I'll see that they have different ages and different backgrounds. And I think that is fantastic. I love what Sami said also with regards to authenticity. Yes, that will always help, because when a person already loves the product from before the brand reaches out to them, they will speak about it with a different kind of excitement, and they will mention that they've been either using it or wearing it for a long time. So I always think the variety is the best. So I would say to just do a little bit of everything all the time, not just, unless you want to create like rapid fire sales, then that's different. So that's why I guess a brand needs to, from the beginning, needs to know, okay, do I want to spread the word about this product, or do I want conversion? So I think when you know that from the beginning, then you take, what route to take.
Yeah, and to your point about hiring a lot of different types of people on campaigns, we ran a campaign for a piece of technology hardware. And I'm sure that they were thinking like mostly younger folks would be great for that. But we hired a grandmother who used it to keep in touch with her grandchild. And we hired a dad who used it to actually keep in touch with his brother who was in a different city. And we hired a young mom who used it for a different reason. So getting that variety, I think, is super important. So that was a very good point.
One of the things that has felt like it's been a thread throughout our conversation here and throughout the day has been one of authenticity, and how authenticity is super important. At the same time, I think I want to acknowledge that authenticity can be scary. Let's say you're hired to review a product, or you're hired for something, and no product's perfect. How do you sort of talk about that? That's sort of a question for influencers. And then also the question on the brand side is how do you embrace the other side of the question, where you want a creator to be authentic, but you don't want them to say anything. There's just a little bit of potential tension there, and how do we navigate that? So maybe I'll go and start with the influencers first. Frederick, what do you think about that question?
Yeah, I mean, what you said is absolutely true. Everything is not perfect when you get into the mix of it, and you may decide, this particular thing is not good at all, or my audience won't like this at all, or, I'm not sure how to move forward. One thing I always do is I immediately communicate with the brand and let them know, like, hey, here are my thoughts about this particular product or whatever the thing is. And I can either proceed and write these things, but I want you to be aware of it before I do. Or we can decide this is not the best thing that we like to do right now. So if it's not going to be, and I always want to be authentic with everything and talk about my actual experience with it, but I want the brand to have a heads up beforehand, like, this is what I'm writing, and you may or may not like it, but this is what I'm going to write. So I just want you to be aware. This is what I thought. I don't know if maybe, sometimes they say, hey, we want to make some improvements, so we want to take your feedback and what you've done. but maybe, we don't want to post something about this. Or they say, hey, I appreciate your honesty, your feedback. Go ahead and post it and let's see what people say about it. So it's just a matter of communicating and being honest with the brand and letting them know what's going on, how this will affect their standing, because, of course, it will have an effect. And just communicate through that and decide what's going to be best moving forward.
Makes
I could say something that I've started to do recently. I wasn't doing it before. As we get constantly bombarded by by brands that they're trying to reach out to us to promote something. And at the beginning, I used to always say, thank you so much for considering me. I don't think it's a good fit. But something that I've started to do recently over the last, year or two is, sometimes I start to think like there's a person on the other side of this email. There's a person who has their own ideas, and why not give them a chance to explain themselves? So now what I do, instead of saying no, thank you, is I will say, this is usually the areas that I cover, but is there something that you see? Is there a specific reason why you reached out to me? What do you have in mind? So instead of just responding and closing a door and saying, thank you, bye, I give them an opportunity to talk. And it's been very interesting. Some things, from the get-go, you kind of say, I really have a hard time thinking how I'm going to be able to fit this. But sometimes they come up with really good answers. And I value that and I appreciate it. And sometimes because of what they've explained, I've said, okay, sure, let's give it a try. So giving the brand an opportunity to share with you what they have in mind to create with you. And I just wish I guess I had started that earlier.
Sami, your thoughts? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I love that idea, Florencia. And I completely echo what Frederick said. I think if it's a paid campaign, you always go back to the brand first. As a consumer, though, as a human being, we have to remember we're all human beings, whether on the brand side or the influencer side. I get really suspicious and skeptical if I see a completely perfect review or a completely perfect vacation or a completely perfect meal. And I remember one of the first times I was working with a restaurant chain over a series of months, and one of my teens read the review and they're like, you're going to tell them that you sent that back? And I'm like, yes, because that happens. And really what I thought the beauty was how they responded when I sent something back. It wasn't just because it was bad. It was a new thing they were trying. I didn't particularly like it. They asked if I could try something else, and they brought out something that I loved. And so in the reality, and of course I talked to the brand about it because I know like this was the thing they wanted to promote this month. I didn't love it, but someone else might. But I loved the waiter's response. I loved the chef's response. And so those are the reviews that I resonate more authentically. And even, to Matthew's point, when you're trying to get 5-star reviews, sometimes a 5-star review isn't always the most beneficial. The most beneficial is someone that says, that I've done this, I've worked it, I've tried it, I've worn it, and I've done it for 3 months, and here's my results. And I find that when you're honest with brands, most of them want that because those are the things that people are going to listen to, as opposed to just, this is great, this is the best, I just got it in the mail. And that people are just like, oh, that's a sponsored campaign, so it doesn't. I think a lot of us that have been doing this as OG bloggers, say that we wouldn't talk about anything that we wouldn't get paid for anything we wouldn't talk about for free. And so it has to resonate in that line with my audience. Otherwise, it's not going to work. And then the brand isn't going to get any value out of it at all.
Yeah, Sami, exactly what you're saying is absolutely right. One thing that we have to understand, the brands have to understand, is when we're creating content, it's not always about us, it's about the audience. So I love what you said, I may not like it, which is true. And I always say, I don't like it, but I always say, but you may, because, you and I are different, but this is my perspective on this thing. So just understand that we're writing for a particular audience, and we're trying to share whatever the things that are about the particular thing that we're writing about or doing a video about, and just having that audience to respond to it. Here's our take on it, but what do you think? And that just gives an opinion, a way to have a conversation and a dialogue and to get some engagement.
It's really interesting to hear all of your responses to this. I know as a marketer, I'm like, part-time or full-time control freak over our message, our brand. Matthew, Christine, you can probably empathize with that. How do you, what's the way to kind of give up a little bit of creative control in return for something authentic? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, and I think it's always tough to, on the marketing side, also setting realistic expectations internally, right? So in terms of authenticity, one of the things that I tend to do is I'll script out, depending on what the ask is. If it's a bigger project, sometimes scripting sort of like a concept, or just to be able to describe, here's what we're thinking, or an idea, and then being very clear, like, this is directional only, not take it and make it your own. But sometimes at least that's communicating. For the influencer, I find that a lot of times I'll get feedback on wanting more direction rather than less. I find that totally get influencers sometimes feel like end up being micromanaged, but I've actually had often the opposite experience, where they're like, thank you so much, this was much easier to kind of understand what you were looking for, or for them to push back too, if it's like, oh, this isn't what I do, or are you okay with this? Again, it depends on the project, depends on who it is. One thing that I've appreciated here at Tree Hut is, internally, we've really gone towards more authentic. Again, it's been part of the community that we've been fortunate to be supported by. But nails don't have to be perfect, and it's okay if there's other brands in the shot, but sometimes people might come by my queue and be like, do you think it's okay that we showed a different brand in there? And it's like, yeah, because nobody showers with only one brand in the shower. It's okay. It's not gonna, they're gonna buy more than one kind of body scrub or shampoo, and let's keep it real rather than asking them to, and we're, as I said, we're really only working with people that are already using our products. We're not doing big scale campaigns at this point, but I love that because it feels real. And I think that's one of the magical things about social media, especially, is that I think there is just a magic when something is real. The consumer feels it, it comes across, and I think, it just resonates more. It's constantly, even though I've been doing this for over a decade, it's amazing that sometimes you might have a beautiful piece of content that comes in from an influencer, and that won't be what does well. It'll be something that was kind of raw, and maybe nobody on the internal team was even a huge fan of it, but it resonated with their audience, or it just felt more real. And I'm constantly, I love being wrong. I love learning and, being like, okay, that really worked. So let us understand why we didn't think that it would.
Thank you. So my next question is for the influencers again. Can you all give an example of a partnership with a brand that went particularly well, and give some reasons for why it went particularly well? And also conversely, is there a partnership that didn't go well, and what was the cause of that? And you don't need to name brand names here, but just give us your thoughts on that. Sami, would you like to go?
I'm going to defer to Frederick first, because I know he had a really great example, and I want to try to think of both, if that's okay.
Okay, I'll start. There's a brand, actually I will name them, it's called Omron. They make medical devices for cardiovascular and heart health. And they approached me probably, it's been like 4 years ago or so, to do a campaign to raise awareness about high blood pressure and stroke risks, because they have something called Go Zero. They don't want anyone to die from these complications. And I've had experience with my family, people I know with these conditions, and at first I was like, this is, I don't know if this is a good thing. But then I started realizing, this is really something that my audience can benefit from, considering the demographics of my audience. So we started working on some campaigns, and we've steadily worked on campaigns for the past 4 years. And the good thing about them, and I think it's a real partnership, because not only do I promote their products, they also promote me. on their channels. They put paid advertising behind the posts that I do. They include me in media appearances that they may have to talk about the products, talk about my experience with them. They included me last year in the huge tech conference there in Las Vegas as one of their featured panelists. So they, not only are we working on campaigns together, but we're doing things throughout the year to enhance each other's brands and to make sure that we remain communicating with one another and working with one another. That ways may not necessarily be paid campaigns, but ways are promoting both of our brands in a way that gets us in front of audiences that we may not be able to get into otherwise. When I did that panel with them, probably I think it was in January, that opened up some more writing opportunities for me that I would have never connected with had I not worked with them on that panel. So this continues to be a great partnership. In fact, I just signed an extension just this month. So this is great. So we continue to work together and support one another. As far as ones that have not gone well, there have been a few. And in these things, I think sometimes it just comes down to miscommunication and expectations, not having the proper expectations, and me thinking one thing and the brand thinking a totally different thing, and not having all those things ironed out and lined out before we got started. So as a consequence of those things, I make sure that we get everything in writing beforehand. So we are all very clear on what the deliverables are, what the expectations are, how we're going to work together, how we're going to communicate. So all these things are very clear at the start, and it eliminates problems. It eliminates so many problems. So that's the key right there.
I'll follow up with that, Frederick, because that helped me think of one that didn't go so well. And I think you're right. It starts before the campaign happens. I think for me, the campaigns that didn't work well are the ones that I never actually followed through with because of those exact things. The one that I'm thinking of was a major national chain, and this was back in the day, they really wanted banner ads. And I just said, that's not, it sounds silly, but that used to be a big thing. And I'm like, that's not going to do well on my site. My audience likes the story. They like a continuing story. And there was a lack of, there was an insistence on something that I was saying that I knew wouldn't work and wouldn't give them the ROI they wanted, plus a lack of communication and clarity. So I really I cut it off before it would go, because I don't want to waste someone's time or money. And so I think that's really key, as opposed to a brand that has been an ongoing success for me as a major national resort brand that honestly I worked for trade again, I've been working with them for over a decade. And in the beginning, that worked for me as a newer blogger. It was somewhere that I loved. They have a resort locally that our family loved. And so it was just natural. And because I was able to prove myself in those early days and be consistent, people come to me naturally to hear about that brand. And so once they saw that was happening, even though my numbers on any one platform aren't as big, because they saw my reach and the conversations that were happening with my audience, now they've turned into one of the biggest sponsors of my TV show. And so, we talk about, is it worth it to just do a product trade? Maybe not. But if it's something that your family is doing and loving and enjoying already, or you as an individual, then to be able to parlay that. And I think for me, what I found has been really helpful is to not give too many ideas away before there's a relationship, but to say, this is how I see a partnership being successful, and actually going to the brand. And even if it hasn't worked in the past, being able to go back and say, here's something new that I've been doing, or here's how this platform has grown for me, and revisiting brands and going back and almost giving them a quarterly or even a semi-annually kind of report card or an updated media kit to say, we've wanted to work in the past, or you didn't have the budget in the past, but here's how I think we could really be successful together now. And that's been really helpful, because not only am I helping the brand or the agency do their work and give them some tangibles, but I'm being able to show them that I'm growing as well. And I think being able to bring testimonials in, I'll ask if someone DMs me and says, thanks for that tip. I'll even say, hey, do I have your permission to share this with the brand? or to, would you mind writing something? And I think for a brand to be able to say, here's a real person that bought something or stayed somewhere as a result of a story they saw on my show or on my Instagram or on my blog, has been really, really helpful all the way around.
Great. We only have 3 minutes left in our session. We might go a couple of minutes over, but Florencia, I'd love to give you a chance to answer this question as well.
I've been very fortunate with good experiences. It was only maybe just once that it was a huge brand and they required, photos, images, and blog posts. And it was the only time in my entire career of blogging that I've been requested to submit everything that I've written about it in the blog article to them for a review. And the date was coming, the day that I had to publish the article, and then they just wouldn't return it to me. They wouldn't return to me, and I wanted to comply with the contract. So I'm like, within X amount of hours, I'm gonna have to post it in order to comply. They end up sending it to me literally right before, and when I take a look at it, I'm like, I did not write this. They rewrote the entire thing, and it wasn't in my voice. It wasn't lines that I would have said. So I was in a spot that I said, what should I do? Because, the deadline was there. It was like in a few hours. And, there's always a risk of like, if you don't comply with the contract, then they'll tell you, well, you breached the contract or whatever. So that's the only time in my life that I've felt that they kind of like did it on purpose. Other than that, I've had wonderful experiences. Always communication is key. I love what Sami mentioned. I do the same exact thing. I provide the brand with kind of like snapshots of or screenshots of messages that I get from the audience or people that say, because I do a lot of traveling, maybe not last year, but I've done it in the past. So people that say, oh, I went to that hotel because of you and I loved it. So yes, I do the same thing that Sami said, and I provide reports for the brand, even if it's clothing or the travel industry. And I think it's fantastic. And so they can also see how you grow or how you have helped them. So other than that specific experience that I just shared, other than that, I've had very, very awesome partnerships with brands. And yes, as long as you communicate clearly from the beginning, you're very transparent. If there's something that you don't like, maybe from the beginning, you've got to be very honest about it and share it with them to see what they think. But overall, it's been a very positive experience.
Thanks. Okay, I am going to, first of all, let me say in the prep call, we started talking, said, okay, we can clearly talk for a couple hours on these subjects. So we're still just scratching the surface. And thanks everybody for your detailed and really thoughtful answers. I'm going to give the last word here to the brand side for Matt and Christine. Matt, you have a very successful brand. Your company's growing. You're in sort of a non-traditional market, I guess you might say, for influencer and creator marketing. What do you think the future holds in this space, and what are you excited about?
I absolutely think that in order to scale business in any facet, you have to be able to diversify your channel mix. And certainly it's proven that as the younger generation continues to age, specifically in the caregiver circle, Gen Xers, that this will be a big topic of conversation is how would you get attention to them. They don't use the same media channels, the traditional sources that you're used to with an older generation don't typically work. And so it's more of, how do we adapt and how do we figure out a way to scale into these initiatives? I wrote down a ton of notes because I don't want to sideline all these conversations, but just so many different questions on, I heard the words like organic, awareness, influence, like those are like if you're talking to equity or executive level audiences from a marketing side, those are things that kind of give you the twitch, right? Is because they're long tail. Just speaking for organic search, it's typically unstable. You don't know what the results are going to populate through. And so I think that the hesitancy is always, well, what is the measurable goal? Is it likes? Is it engagement? And what is that actually driving to your bottom line? Because at the end of the day, it all about when you're on the brand and marketing side, it's P&L, it's spend versus sales, very cut and dry, and getting into conversations with presentations saying, well, we're growing this influencer market and we think it's going to drive a lot of buzz and lift to our brand. How do you tie that back to, and that equals organic volume and that equals sales? And I know, there's some analytical things you could do in nowadays with Google Analytics, but I think it's so much long-term that I think that's why a lot of brands stay away from it, because it's an unknown when there's so many different media channels like Facebook and paid search and whatever it may be that drive direct response. And I guess that's the question for all the influencers is what do you say to a brand that they can say to their exec team or equity, or even if they're public, about how this kind of marketplace is really driving future sales and leads?
Maybe if we want, we'll ask the influencers to give a 15-second response to that. But before I do, Christine, let me give you an opportunity just to talk about what the future holds in your mind.
Oh, I wish I had a crystal ball. I heard it mentioned on the last panel. I think for me, if I could invent something, it would just be more revenue sharing or ways to do that more easily. With influencers, nano, micro, macro, and with whitelisting, like being able to, with the new iOS privacy challenges, I think, we don't exactly know. We're already seeing CPMs start to go up. I think the idea of reaching an influencers, like boosting and promoting, like using the brand partnership tools on Instagram and Facebook to reach influencers audience, I suspect that will become, for the influencers on the panel, that will become part of your kind of arsenal of wealth, really, right? As it gets harder to track consumers, that's going to be something that you have to offer. So I suspect that we're going to see a lot more of that sort of right in the back end, being able to track more metrics and partner more easily, and also then sharing some of that revenue. I think we're seeing a lot of that, like the live shopping. I know that's big in Asia, right? So I think we're only getting started with where influencers and social media are going to drive right to sales.
Thanks, Christine. Okay, I was going to end it there, but I'm going to give the influencers an opportunity, 10 or 15 seconds each, since we're over time, on either what the future holds or responding to Matt's question or plugging your social media accounts.
I do want to answer Matthew's question really quickly. I think brands have to look at the long term and the long tail effects of what they do right now. So I wrote a post in 2014 about a particular brand's clothing. To this day, this remains one of my highest viewed posts every single day. And people always send me messages asking me about when they're going to update the products, when they're going to get new products. And if I had direct contact with that product manager, like, wow, I have a whole lot of feedback for you and how you can really expand your brand. But just think about the long-term effect and not focusing so much. And I know it's hard. I know it's hard for marketing. You want the immediate impact and you want those that ROI and KPIs to acknowledge what's happened, but think more long-term and how this can build up the brand for people who may search years from now, like, oh, that is something I need right now, and here's some information on that.
Yeah, I would just say really quickly, Matt, communicate what you're looking for. I know when you have a board of directors or if you're public, are you looking for impressions? Are you looking for sales? And then work with people that can deliver in that. Work with someone that can show you their affiliate sales. Work with someone that's willing to share their Google Analytics. I mean, it's not rocket science in that sense. So when you know what you're looking for and what you need to answer to be able to get the funding to pay for influencers, then you're just upfront in that and say, we want to work with you. Here's what we need, whether it's a testimonial, which, Florencia was saying that I think this can be a great way to determine ROI, but if you need numbers, then you ask for those upfront, and that you have a 3-month contract with a 30-day escape clause or whatever it happens to be. And it just makes it really simple that way.
I agree with both of them that there are ways that you can track numbers. You can ask, like she said, I'm just repeating the same thing, but it's the truth. Whether it's impressions, a person can show you that. Whether it's analytics, they can show you that. For us that we sell on reward style we can show that. So I think those are the tools that we have at the moment. I hope, you know, they evolve into something else. This industry is still fairly new. I mean, it has a better reputation and it's more, I think, respected than before. But at the same time, I think there's a lot of developments that needs to happen. I'm sure somebody out there is creating, you know, ways to track numbers and such. But I understand it's not the easiest. But like I said, you know, maybe 20 or 30 minutes ago, from the beginning, you need to know what you want. Awareness is not really going to give you numbers fast, meaning money fast, but it will, like Frederick said, then from there you can build on it by putting that product out there, that word of mouth, that sharing, and all of that. So it's just it's a work in progress. You know, it's evolving, but it's evolving in a good way. So I think there's a bright future out there for this.
Yeah, and if I can say really quick for brands and influencers, one of the things that's helped me, if you're hiring a babysitter or something, you want to get references, right? When I have a relationship with brands I've worked with that has done well, they share the results of their tools with me. So they have these third-party systems that pull analytics that I couldn't pull myself in a much bigger way. And when they share it with me, then I have the opportunity to share that with other brands or even connect them and say, hey, if you don't want to take my word for it, talk with this brand manager I worked with. And so that's a great way for brands to know that a brand is being honest when you have that relationship. But for influencers, don't be afraid to say, hey, do you have anything that you've pulled from third-party software that I could then put in my media kit or share with other brands?
All right. This has been a great session for me and a great conference summit overall. Thanks to everybody who attended. Thanks to all our panelists this time around. And Sarah and I will sign off. And thanks. Really appreciate it.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.